Hello, my spooky friends. I have a fun tutorial for you today. I'm going to show you how to save time and money by turning this $4 mask into this one using ingredients that you probably already have lying around your house. So this mask will require you to use some liquid latex, and if you don't have that, you can head on over to the craft store, but I would advise picking up the rest of your items at the grocery store, as it will save you a lot of money, like your flour and your glue. So that'll get you on your way to trying this fun tutorial today. No hanging out and waiting for Amazon to ship it to you. So begin to hone those skills. Today you can make this mask. So let's just go ahead and get into it. To make the horns, I'm using 4 sheets of aluminum foil, 2 per horn, and I'm again working at the bottom to form a base. So I take aluminum foil and I start at the bottom of the corner, and I begin to wrap that into the shape that I need. And then once I have that, making sure that I have the same width and the circumference as the other one, I then apply the other sheet of aluminum foil to go ahead and swing that out to a point so that it rounds off and looks like ram horns. The aluminum is what's going to keep things lightweight so that mask does not pull forward, because these are on the top. Now with some electrical tape, I go through and I wrap these, and the best thing to do is pull a little bit more tape than what you need so that you don't actually go through and make these skinny. You want to keep the same circumference, and so in order to pull that tape, pull more than what you need and then wrap around until you get to the end and a point, and then you want to use some scissors to make that end sharp as you can get it. Now if you do not have electrical tape, you can use masking tape and then paint those black after you have finished. Now the mask that I'm using today comes from Spirit Halloween. As you can see, it is literally a $4 mask, but you can use a thinner one if you don't have access to Spirit Halloween or you can't find it on the website. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going through and I'm mapping out my design so I can keep it in my mind how this look is supposed to be, going through and comparing it with the horns so where I can put the ridges up into the forehead. But mainly this is to map out the eye area and to make it a little bit bigger, because the liquid latex paste that we're going to sculpt with will be a bit bulky and you want to be able to see, and also where to cut out the portion of the mouth, because I'm not using that for this look. But if you wanted to keep it and sculpt your own teeth and mouth, be sure to leave that hole in so you can eat and drink. I'm making sure to secure my elastic band so I don't accidentally cut it by taping it to the inside, and with some scissors I go in and cut out the portion around the eyes, as well as cutting out around the nose and the mouth. I then smooth out any jagged edges with a Dremel, but if you don't have that as an option, you can use tape, making sure that you tape up underneath to protect your face. Now with some craft foam paper, I drew some ears and then I cut those out. And cardboard works just as well if you don't have craft foam paper. And seeing that this mask is cut directly across the top of the forehead, I am using this prosthetic piece I did for a Valentine's look, where I had these pieces embedded into the silicone, and I cut those out so that I can use that to build up the part around the horns. Now it's time to make some paper mache with some flour and water. I go in and set that in, getting it mixed to a consistency that looks like thin milk. I then cut up some newspaper and use some cotton to build up the eyebrow bone in this look and build up the design in the horns. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting the cotton in and only on the outside edges, and my spooning on the paper mache, and then I dip my newspaper in fully and then begin to cover it. This is going to keep everything lightweight, and it also is going to build up the shapes. Just make sure that every time that you're dipping your paper into the mixture that you are actually stirring it with your hands so you pick up that flour, because it has a tendency to settle at the bottom of the water. Now at this point in time, don't get too hung up on the actual shape. What you're doing is building height and decreasing the weight. So when you do sculpt with a liquid latex paste, you have height in order to bring out details. Just be sure not to cover that cotton completely with the paper mache, because you want it to be bulky. Don't forget to add cotton and the paper mache around the entire socket of the orbital bone, which is what I forgot to do. I got ahead of myself and I started to place my cotton and my paper mache around the nose and the mouth, but that's okay. I try not to get hung up on things like this because this tutorial gives you an opportunity to continue to add to its design. I fill the mask up with paper mache going over the nose and down into the cheek area, and then once I have my design in place, I go in with a hair dryer on high for about 20 minutes for each layer, and I'm going back and forth between the cotton and the paper mache, and I continue to build up a little bit more because the paper mache, once it's wet, it does kind of shrink what you have up underneath, but just continue to build up what you need for the design you like. And with my horns, because I need to glue them to the back of this mask, I press them down to make them flat so they would fit, and I hold them in place, and then I turn the mask over and I put some more glue to secure it to the back of the mask. Now at this point you might have some areas in the paper mache that has lifted or a little bit flimsy or not completely attached. Don't worry about that. Go through on the underside and make sure that those are secure. It's going to give a more comfortable feel so you don't have pieces of paper that are hitting your face. And also we are going to coat this, so we have a clear coat that's going to lay all that paper down and get it secure. And I do that by using wood glue in one layer. Now this is what I had on hand, but you could also do this with Elmer's glue as well. The goal is just to get a dried, tacky surface that liquid latex paste has something to latch onto. You just want to be sure, no matter what you're using to seal the paper mache, that you give it enough time to dry completely before you move on to the next step. I like to use clear dry liquid latex. There is a link in the description below. You can use the exact brand and formula that I am using in this tutorial, but it's best to mix small batches at a time. Now with the flour, I am moving the mixture from inside going out, and if you get a texture that looks like oatmeal but it's starting to clump up, continue to add liquid latex and mix until you get a consistency that looks something like cornmeal. I pour just a small amount onto a plate that's going to help me run my fingers and my tools through this liquid latex. But your consistency should be a formula that does not fall off the tools that you're using, so you will have to spoon it in and get that into the place. But the rough measurements for this, because it will depend on your environment, if you're working and it's cold or you have fans running. So as a good rule, it's a 1-to-1, so a half a cup of liquid latex and half a cup of flour, and you still see I had to go in and mix a little bit more to get it the consistency that I could smooth it. But I was able to use this entire batch to cover all the mask at once. Now you do have a good amount of time to work with liquid latex in this paste formula. What happens is once you get everything onto the mask and you begin to smooth everything, in about 10 minutes you'll see that the formula will start to dry just a little bit, so you can form those shapes even more. You see now that I can drag my finger through the grooves and get those to pop out and make those ridges come to a better peak at the very top of the mask, as well as all the other details around the eye socket and the nose. And although this footage is sped up for time, I did want to show you realistically how long you have to work with it and not take everything out. I didn't want to be a magical, and I put paste on here and boom, it's done, and then this is done, and then that is done. I wanted to show you that it does take a little bit of time, so don't get worked up over if things are not looking like you think they should, because you'll have, you know, like I said, 30 minutes to push in those designs and get them more honed and looking more like the design that you had in your head. So don't worry about that process. Just get everything as smooth onto the mask and then give it enough time to set up so you can go through and create shapes and peaks and get everything sharp where in the areas that you need them to be. Be sure when you're using the paste that you go up underneath the mask a little bit, so around the eye socket, around the nose, and over onto the mouthpiece, you want to push just enough paste in there, and what it's going to do is take care of the jagged edges, and no rough edge will be seen, so you're covering the mask completely. And when I do this, I get everything into place, and then because I forgot to put cotton and paper mache to build up that orbital bone, I'm having to use a little bit more latex paste, and I save this for the end so that I can actually build up and that mixture is a bit more stiff, so I have those big huge eye sockets and that demonic look to the mask. And if you do need to build up like I did around the orbital bone or around the nose, and you are running out of paste, you can then use cotton and liquid latex to get more bulk and to take out the weight. For more of a fine detail around the nose, I go through and create the nostrils, and then with some cotton I go in and I trim out the nose just to have that big nice nostril flare. And now it's time to connect and put my ears into place. You see I cut out bigger ones because it fit the design. The other ones were too small. And using liquid latex, I go in and secure those onto the face, making sure I do that in the front and up underneath onto the back. I cover everything in liquid latex, and once that is starting to get tacky, I take my cotton and I build up the ear, going around the edges and putting some more cotton into the center, and then tapping in just plain liquid latex to get that cotton batting to lay down, or if you still have paste, you can use that as well. Just get it covered in latex. Whatever you got, get it covered. Cotton, liquid latex, or paste. Now with the cotton that I have in the center and before it dries, I take a tool and I just maneuver that around to give it an added dimension and match the rest of the design. Now that the face is dry, I'm going in with some red water paint and mixing that and thinning it out because I want a wash. I like to build up my color instead of going in with a base that's so harsh that I can't take away from it. So it's a little bit easier with water to go in and tap color out if you need to, but if you are going to use acrylic or any other paint, which you can do with this, I would go in with thin layers so they dry and you can see how it's going to set, or if the paint oxidizes, but it's easier to add to than to take away color. I used 2 coats of red for full opacity, and doing the same thing with the black, and also use a smaller brush for details. I go in and wash that black into the eye sockets and around the nose and bringing out any other detail that I want. So if anything is sunken in or comes close together around the bridge of the nose, in the nostrils, and those valleys in between the designs at the top of the forehead is going to really push the design, those peaks up, and that'll be your highlight. So your red is going to pop up, and then the black will push everything down, adding more dimension to your design. This is just going to give you an opportunity to use highlights and shadows to really make your design pop. And I know this is a little bit late in the tutorial, but you're like, Stacy, I don't have face casts and things like that to use to start sculpting and do this project. You see at this point that I am doing everything by rolled towels, so you don't need fancy equipment to get this job done. So you see me go in and paint the rest of my ears, making sure I push that black into the darker parts. And I thought I need something a little bit different. I wanted not just have a black horn, so I'm taking some thin flat nylon string and I'm going over the base 6 times, and then I go through and I crisscross for design, and then I go back and forth between a solid wraparound of 4, crisscross, wrap around with 4, and crisscross till I get to the very end. And then I want to secure that end with just a little bit of glue because I don't want things to unravel. And then I go in and match the design onto the other horn. And once I get everything to match, I go in and I almost spot weld with glue. So I go in onto the back and I just put in points where I want the glue to keep this string whole. Now I didn't like it to be stark white, so I went over my strings with a light gray wash. Once I was done, I took the mask and I gave it a glossy clear coat. And here is the final product. I took a look about what was available for purchase, and a mask like this will run you $40 to $50, but here we took this white $4 mask and turned it into this rammed horn devil. And as I'm wearing it, you can see that it is secure, it is not moving. I can turn my head in every direction, I can look down and up, and it does not slip, and that elastic band that came with it is still secure and it is not moving. I think this is a perfect one for cosplay, or if you have the means to travel with it, or you're going to be in a live action shot. I think this will hold up very well. And if you like this tutorial and you want to see more fabrications like this while having fun and saving time and money, hit that subscribe button. And now that you've turned this $4 mask into this one, why not hang out for this next tutorial where I turn myself into another demon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.